Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first kind of pre-lab video and introduction specifically just for R. So we are going to, and you see I have some, let me clear. Actually, you can watch me right now. Google clear data in our, in our studio. And we're going to do this. And let's remove everything in here. And we don't need to have that data loaded up, and so we'll remove that. Okay, anyways, so you just saw that we opened, we hopefully have already gotten R installed, so you want to install R, and then you also want to install RStudio, which is going to allow us to work and write scripts and all these good things. R is it's an excellent program, and it's an excellent program for very specific things that we want to do. The way that I use R is a lot of times mostly for statistical analysis, and I'll use different codes and different tools for different things. So that's kind of the motto and the way that I approach all types of coding projects. So let's take a look at RStudio. So we have a console, we have our terminal, which allows us to kind of interface with like a CMD on our computer. You can look at any background jobs that are running. I can also look at kind of my file directory here. And so you can import files quickly just by kind of clicking on them. I think we want to, in this course, try to get in the habit of kind of reading in files and those things like that. We can visualize plots here and export and save them. There's lots of kind of cool things. You can have like R markdown menus where you can export your R code as a PDF. So there's lots of things that we can do. I'm very minimalistic when it comes to R. It's really specifically for the data that I'm trying to analyze and the statistical tools and procedures that I'm trying to run. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But let's go ahead and get started. So I've just opened up my R script. So first thing, I always just want to save. So I'm just going to save it as, I'm just going to do it on my the intro, just my documents, R intro 1. So let's save, and I'm just going to start to comment. So if I put this hash symbol, it'll allow me to write comments. Always comment your code, except for me. So that's effectively what we're going to be doing here. So R, I mean, again, like lots of other programs, it could just be a calculator. So I am going to do that, and I'm going to press to evaluate effectively this code. And we really want to work within the script. I can actually do this within the console, 1+1, and I can do Control Enter, and I can get an output. But we want to work, line by line. Again, it's your choice, but I would strongly recommend that. So when we want to, let's write a comment, to evaluate line of code, I just press Control plus Enter, or Control and Enter at the same time. So I can do that up here, and you'll see I'll also get my output as well. So I don't have to print, which is nice. I really like that about, and it's you don't have to kind of really see a lot of those things. But again, it's nice. I could also just go ahead and I could run my script. There's lots of kind of cool things that we're going to kind of encounter here. But I could basically go ahead and run the whole, we could run the whole script if we want to. So let's see. And again, you can find here, there's lots of things that you can kind of see. So I can import my data set here. I can compile a report. Again, if you want to kind of share this, I could run current line, current section. I could rerun the whole, I can do a region. Or previous region. I can run the current line. You can see here, and we should be able to run. Let's see, where is it at? Excuse me. Let's see here. We should be able to run. Here we go. We should be able to run the whole section. Send a terminal. We can do run region. We could run all. So we could run the whole thing, and you can kind of see. My outputs are also, my comments are outputted here as well. So we can kind of see that and get those values. So again, it's just your choice, and you can kind of see, you'll get used to the hotkeys as well. I always just do kind of line by line until I'm ready to run the full thing, and then I may run the whole region So if it's a long code, again, I don't typically run significant codes, but you could do Alt-Control-R. So that may be quicker. You could run a whole section. So Alt-Control-T. So I can do Alt-Control. I can do Alt-Control-T. Alt-Control for a specific section. But anyways, so you can kind of run those and control it line by line and get those values. But you can go beyond, obviously. So you can do square root of 100. We can get that value. I can do log of 1. And you kind of see some of those values start to pop up, right? So I have log base 10. So if I have 10, hopefully this should be 1. And you can kind of see things that crop up. Cosine, pi, all of these things. When you're doing cosine, you can kind of see here, we are operating in radians. So if I want degrees, I have to do it kind of manually times here times pi divided by 180, and then you can control enter, and you can see we get a value that's effectively 0. So you can kind of see what's going on and what's happening here, and what we can possibly do as well. You can confirm that if we have cosine of 0 radians, then we got this. We can do 5 to the 3, so you can do powers. Lots of things that we can kind of do. Another interesting or very, very useful tool is we can create variables. There's multiple ways you can do that. So you can do kind of the old-fashioned x equals 5. And you can see now we have a variable 5, and I have to do x plus 1. We can kind of see that here. More often than not, you'll see a lot of people do pointers. So a point, and you can kind of, x plus 1. I can do x squared. I could do square root of x. Square root of x. I could do cosine of x. All that good stuff. I can do log of x. Excellent. So, you can do lots of those things, but you'll often see this as the way that they kind of point and essentially show the variables that we'll be working with here. So that's a nice way to kind of basically work and create variables and then use those mathematical operations. I can also create functions. So create a function in R. Kind of similar to how you may have seen this in another one. So I can do, for example, if I want to do the area of circle, I'm going to create that as a variable, and then I'm going to call in this function here. And it's a function of my radius, so that's the variable that's going to be changing. And then I'm going to do, and put this in the squiggly brackets, and that's really important here, pi times my radius, you can see it kind of square. And so I could define, that's my area of a circle function. And so to operate and to run that, all I have to do now is area of a circle, and then I could just plug in a variable for 2. Or I can do area of a circle, and I can just do R. And you see here now, this is where, again, sometimes, or not sometimes, this is where I think a lot of the answer is, we always need to learn lots of different programs, because this is, it would nice to be to see something symbolic. You see, we're really only going to work with, kind of a value here. So it's not really going to work if we don't do symbolic, or if we try to do symbolic things. Let's try to just do a big area of a circle. Yeah, you see, it's not going to work because we're doing numerical operations. So you're going to get effectively the errors here. The errors are really important to look at and then kind of see, again, non-numeric going into binary operator. You can get some sense about, well, what is it actually, like what are we actually putting in, and then to debug our code, because debugging is actually a critical technique too. Let's create some arrays, like 1D lists, and then do mathematical, and then perform mathematical operations. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to create my data X. So I'm going to create a data X, and I am going to basically make a list. And I can make a list in multiple ways. So I can do, we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can do that here. See, it doesn't like that. It's not the same as. I can do this. Oh, it still doesn't like that. What are we gonna do? We have to kind of put this seed in front of it. This is going to create and concatenate essentially that array. And you can kind of, if you ever are interested, you could always click on this here and see what these variables are. Or you can actually just print out right here, data x. Do that. Let's see. Usually we're able to click there. And you can see essentially the values here. And I can do, for while we're at it, I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to do data y. Data y, and I'm going to do just randomly 15, 32, 17, 25, 23, 2. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more element, 10, and that should be good. Excellent. I'm just trying to make sure that the basically we have the same dimensions there. And I can start to do mathematical operations. So I could do, what's the mean of my data x? What's the mean? What's the mean of my data y? I'm going to close that. What's my standard deviation of data x? Right? What is my... now I can start to look at dimensions. So I could look at what's the length of my data x. And hopefully it's 10. What are the dimensions of data x? Data x. So you see it spits out essentially that null value here because, again, it's just this 1D list. It's not effectively a matrix. I could also do data x times 7. And you can see I could do operations and math, obviously, on that. I could do square root of data x. And we can get that. You can get those values as well. Anyways, I could also find what's the maximum value in data y. What's the minimum value in data y? So you can start to get and sort and play around essentially with those values there as well. Now, oftentimes, maybe I want to combine lists, right? Maybe instead of these kind of two separate lists, maybe I want like an X and a Y. I want 2 columns and I want 10 rows. So I can start to transpose my list and put it into data file format. So those are not uncommon things to do, or to want to do in R especially. So let's say I'm going to get my DAT. So my DAT is going to be equal, I'm going to frame my data. So I'm going to do data frame. And you could always look on, again, R has a very extensive user base, and there's also very helpful functions here. So data.frame. And you can kind of see what needs to go into it. So I'm going to feed in these values, and I'm going to give my rows and columns like names. And you could run essentially these examples if you want as well. So I'm going to look at the format, and I'm going to see how I can essentially specify these values here. So my data frame, I'm going to set my x values equal to my data x. I'm going to set my y values to equal to data y. And I can enter that. And now I can look at that my dat. You can see it gives, I basically set basically my column headers like that. So you can play around with that. I could look at my length of my dat. And you see now my length is 2. So dimensions gives me the better intuition or of what does my data set look like. I could also look at, I could do a summary of my data. So the summary says, okay, you have an X column, you have a Y column, and then it gives you some values here, which is a kind of a useful tool just to kind of get an idea or a peek at your data set. But my dimensions, you see, it gives me rows first, then columns. So that is very important. And now, what's really important, and again, something that we're going to harp on a lot in this course, is we are going to be looking at and extracting data from our data sets. So if I look at my DAT, And if I pull out, if I do bracket 1, I'm pulling out my first column. If I do my dat 2, I'm pulling out my second column. If I do my dat 3, there's an error because, again, I'm not pulling out the columns. If I want to pull out, other values, so let's say my dat, if I want to do, let's say I want to pull out specific elements. So I can do, give me the first and then give me the last of this -1. So give me the last element in that list. So the first column and the last element. And you can pull out essentially the values there. Usually -1 is not working here. It's giving me, let's see, to make sure. Oh, yeah, excuse me. So it's pulling out essentially the first, I was freaked out for a second there. It's giving me that value here. Because if I go to 3, again, there's going to be error. I'm out of the bounds effectively in the data that we're trying to pull out here. So I can't go past. So remember, it's giving me row then column. Again, there's only 2 there. It's always good to double check here. So if I do 2, and we can kind of look at the data set up here, I'm pulling out my y value. So the first row, the second column. If I want here, I'm stuck. I can also pull out different values here. So I can get like the third row in the first element. So that should hopefully be 3. Or I can do 2. Again, you can kind of pull out and extract different values here and different ranges of values. So it's a useful tool, effectively, that you can play around with here. And there's lots of more efficient ways. You can take probably. So for example, let's play around. Let's do my dat. Pull out all of these. Let's see if we can pull out from 1 to -1. So actually, maybe 1 to 2 to 3. Oops, not negative. We can pull out these. That's an exercise for a little bit later on. So don't worry about that. I can also find essentially positions of elements in my lists or in my data set. So for example, I can do where is which. So I can ask which, when is data set equal to 2. I use that phrase just right now in just a bit. 1 second here. Data. Oh, there's no data here because there's no data x. Oh, and we need to do dat x. Dat x. Oops. Where's our... Oh, data x, excuse me. So you gotta... If it's not found, it just means that, again, we're... we're looking at it there. So we can also play around. Actually, let me do... I'm just very interested in this. And sometimes, once my curiosity has been stoked. There we go. So you can pull out rows as well. So if I want the first 3 rows, or again, only columns, etc., you can kind of play around with that. I want to see if it will go negative. Yeah, it's not giving me the whole thing. If I do like 10, then it'll work. That's unfortunate. That was a nice, but again, you can also just make it, if you want to go the full length, you can go to the length of my dat. Actually, see, that's the problem too. You have to go to length. Anyways, we'll deal with that in a different lecture. But I can look at where are the positions in my data. I can also do which data or my dat set equal to 2. So that is very important as well. So you can kind of look and see where effectively does that occur. Now, what's unfortunate there is that you don't see effectively where that's occurring. So I wonder if we do, for example, 10, it'll give us essentially that first, it'll tell us. It gives us essentially at 10 and at 20. But again, so it's counting 10 and then it's counting essentially here as well. So just a different, interesting little kind of caveat there where it's looking. We can also look which my dat, actually, let's do dat x set equal to min. So where's the minimum value of data x? And oops, data x. Data x. There we go. And so you can kind of see the location again. Find position of the elements in your list. This little equality, and I keep saying set equal to or set equal or test equality. It's kind of like a logic operator. So when you're using the double equal sign, is 4 equal to 5? False. So we can say 5 greater than 6. That's also false. So these are kind of basically Boolean or logic operators. So they are very, very, very important, essentially, to look at and try to kind of get a sense of essentially what we're working for. Now, we can also import data sets. And it's very, very important that we are able to work with data sets. So one of the other things that we want to do is actually be able to import data into our program. So one of the simplest ways, if you're just kind of doing a one-off, you can just do, actually, let me show that again. You can do import dataset. So I could import dataset from Excel or different data files. I could browse and see where we want to go. So let's go to ENGR222. I need to clean up my folders a bit here. Let's go to labs. Where are you, labs? Let's go to intro 1R. Let's go to rand, and then let's import this data set. So you can import it, and you can see one of the nice things is it automatically lets you, it shows you kind of what you're working with there. So we have a data set here, but again, we don't really want to look at it that way. I can do, so let's do import data. So I can do, again, summary of rand. So you see that the data is already kind of read in here. So it kind of shows you that. I could look at the dimensions of rand. I could, and so that's telling you essentially I've got 731 rows, 1 column. So we know effectively how how to deal with those. So that's great. I can do again. I just want to practice. 1, 2. Let's give me like my 4 rows. Or actually, excuse me. We can do that again. You can give me the rows. So like 1 to 4. Whoops. Excuse me. We got to do that comma. And then you can kind of see some of the values. It's past there. But anyways, actually, we can do random 1. Oops. Let's do random 1. Yeah, too many things to print effectively. But anyways, we can go ahead and look at those as we run through it. So we've read that in, but oftentimes, it's kind of, I think, a little bit arduous to kind of read these in from importing the whole time. So instead, let's start to read in the files directly. So we're going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and import using ReadXLS function. So on your device, one of the things that we have to do is if we want to use, so you can see as I type, I actually already have this XLS function built in, this library read in. But you may not. And if you don't, you can kind of actually Google like read XLS X. And when you do that, you can see you have effectively this file that you may need to basically install. So this ReadXLS comes from here, so you may have to install essentially a library or install a package and then essentially run that library. So we'll come back to that in a little bit, but you should have this function. If not, we're going to show you how to, well, actually, you can kind of see it here. ReadXL. You can kind of see, and it's showing you the package, ReadXL package, and you have to kind of install that. So actually, let's go ahead and show you how you may have to do it. So install packages, and then you do ReadXL, and then you Control Enter. Again, it's saying that it's probably already it's updating. It's already in use. And then to use it, you have to read in the library ReadXL, and you can see it's already there as well. So now you can use this function. So I can now use this function ReadXL. So I can say my random data, give me this the variable, and I could read XLSX. And then now I'm going to have to go to my folder. Let's go to, I'm going to have to go to here. I'm going to go to, not pieces, where's the labs? Labs, intro, and then I need to, I tried to do this before where I can control C it, but it's not going to show it. So I need to copy as path. Let's do copy as path, and then we can go here. And we want to, if we just try to enter this, it's not going to like it. So it doesn't like these. We need to do this double. So it's a little bit arduous. There's definitely other ways you can kind of read in those files. So, but again, you can kind of, approach it how you may. And then you can look at the dimensions again of random data, like so. And there you go. Again, we're going to learn a little bit more of a, I don't want to say a smarter way, but a way to kind of expedite this significantly. So no worries. But again, you do it how you do. I just want to show you that function is available, and we'll be using it in a bit. So to wrap up, what we want to do is now we know how to do some functions. We know how to read in some data. Now let's learn to plot some data. So again, we need to install some plot packages. So some very helpful packages. Let's do install packages. Tidyverse is kind of a very large database, and it's kind of an assortment of these packages. We could also install packages, and we can also do ggplot 2. That is also a very useful package. And it's already kind of, again, installed in those things. And then again, you have to bring in library of ggplot 2 in here as well. So I can use this function ggplot. So when I use ggplot, and we can look this in here, ggplot, it will show us what we effectively have to have in order to plot this. So if you can see here, it says we need to import our data and specify what our data is. We'll also add essentially an aesthetics. So what is our x-axis, what is our y-axis, and then some other aesthetics. So, and that's usually kind of like a geom function. So you can kind of see geom point, geom, other things. There's a very handy image that I'm going to share with you all that kind of summarizes it. And basically how these ggplots and some of these other tools can work. So we'll share that during our lab session as well. So I got ggplot, and now I need to set my data. So my data, I'm going to say my data is going to be equal to this data set. I'm going to do an X and Y data set so I can plot. So I'm going to do my data is equal to my dat, which is good. I'm going to add some aesthetics. I'm going to say that my X equals my X variable, my Y equals Y. So again, that's reading. If we look back into this data set of my dat, I need to read in my X is going to be, I chose this X-axis here, Y-axis. If it's something else or you're flipping, you have to specify again. The first X in this function here is what's in that column. So you're specifying what is on my X-axis for my plot. It's this column in my data sheet that I'm reading in. So that's kind of a key point here as well. All right. So that's effectively your basic, that's the basics of your ggplot. You need to have these things. And now I can add some kind of cool feature. So I could do geom, I want to do like a point plot. And I could specify, I'm going to say my size is going to be equal to 5. And let's just say my shape is equal to 5. And we'll see what kind of happens. And so we can just control enter this. And we see our function. We can change the shape to 20. We can change the shape to 30. doesn't exist. So again, you can explore, and again, plotting is going to be a function of what you like, and again, what is effectively required in getting it really, really nice and pretty and elegant. And you'll use essentially the same type of code over and over and over and over and over again. So that's we're just getting into the thick of it right now. You can change the size. You can do size 1. Again, it just depends. So it's again, it's a nice function. Any program, in my opinion, it's you kind of iterate towards a nicer and cleaner and cleaner and cleaner a cleaner plot until you find effectively what you like to use over and over again, and then you stick with that. Let's go ahead and kind of copy this, and we can add some functionality. So, for example, instead of actually, I'm going to keep the geom one. I'm going to do geom, and then I'm going to do smooth. So you can look at this plot as well. So you can see the geom smooth gives me this kind of 95% confidence interval, and it's kind of trying to fit, fit this function, and it is showing you here using method and using a formula here. So it's trying to interpolate. It's trying to give you essentially a plot of this. So quite interesting. And again, you can kind of see this and play around with this as well. And you could add on to this. So, for example, in my geom, I could do shape, I could do color equals, I can do blue. So I can do this. I could shift enter. I could do my geom smooth color equals black. Put the excuse me here. Cyan. So you can see, the background or the fill, all those good things. Again, we'd usually probably want to do this as red. Points here, blue or black. Again. So you can see, we could play around a little bit here. I could change in geom smooth. I could make my line type equals dashed. We can also play around a little bit with the filling. So I can say that the fill equals, I haven't tried this one really yet here, green. So we can control enter that. And you can see we've got lots of different options in terms of plotting that we can do. And obviously we're going to get even more complex than this. But again, this is just a jumping off and starting off point. So yeah, I'm excited to see where we go with this course. So this is just a brief introduction. We'll continue next time looking at some more statistical plots, looking at how do we import data, create our own data, and then I think very importantly, for loops, because obviously we're going to be working with large data sets. So how do we loop and create loops in terms of our functions so that we don't have to copy and paste and repeat, especially for things like importing data sets here or importing folders. So I'll look forward to the next time and the next video, and yeah, it's going to be an exciting semester and time learning R. So we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.